My name is Amelia. I'm 32, and the image is seared into my brain. My sister Olivia unwrapping a brand new Tag Heuer watch at her lavish Rooftop birthday bash, my own stomach dropping with every flash of the rose gold. Contrast that with my own celebration just a few weeks earlier, a dry day-old cupcake from the supermarket and a gag card that read, "Hooray for another year down the drain." When I didn't even crack a smile, my mother, Helen, just sighed. "Oh, lighten up. It's a joke, unless you're getting overly sensitive in your old age." I quietly pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of the pathetic little scene, and just walked out of the restaurant. A few hours later, my phone blew up with a call from my cousin, Chloe. She was practically screaming. "What on earth did you do?" If you've ever been the invisible child in your own family, you know what I'm talking about. Drop a comment below and hit that subscribe button. I'd love to hear if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand like I finally did that night. Growing up in a quiet suburb of Boston, my place in the family food chain was clear from day one. As the older daughter, I was the dependable one, the quiet bookworm who aced her classes, helped around the house, and never made waves. My sister, Olivia, 3 years younger than me, was the star. She was the bubbly, charismatic one who could charm anyone and have our parents wrapped around her little finger with just one perfectly timed smile. Our family home, a beautiful colonial with a garden my dad obsessed over, felt less like a home and more like a museum dedicated to Olivia. The living room walls were a gallery of her life, framed photos from ballet recitals, her childhood art projects, and that winning smile in 100 different poses. And my academic awards? My honor roll certificates? They ended up stuffed in a desk drawer, or maybe they'd get a brief moment in the dim hallway leading to the laundry room. This dynamic was set so early that I never really questioned it. I just accepted it as the way things were. I can still picture Olivia's 10th birthday like it was yesterday. My parents transformed our entire backyard into some kind of magical fairyland, complete with a hired magician, a station for making candy necklaces, and a woman who painted intricate fairy designs on all the kids' faces. Every one of her 30 friends went home with a personalized goodie bag, and Olivia herself wore a custom-made dress that my mother had spent weeks designing with a local seamstress. The whole extended family showed up, carrying gifts wrapped in glittery, iridescent paper. For my own 10th birthday, just 3 years prior, I got a quiet dinner at home with my grandparents. My gifts were a set of educational books and a practical new backpack for school. Olivia just has a more demanding social life, my mother explained when I finally got the nerve to ask why her parties were always so much bigger. She needs that extra push to feel confident. "You're already so independent, honey." That became the go-to excuse for every disparity. Olivia needed the expensive arts camp in the summer because she was struggling to find her creative voice. She deserved the brand new laptop because her graphic design hobby required professional tools. My straight A's and academic scholarships, on the other hand, were just expected. "You just have a natural talent for school, my father," Richard would say with a shrug, completely ignoring the countless hours I spent studying. Olivia has to work twice as hard for half the results. This pattern bled into every aspect of our lives. When I won the statewide History Bee in middle school, my parents came to the awards ceremony but ducked out right after I got my plaque so they could get Olivia to her soccer practice. That plaque sat on the kitchen counter for a few days before it vanished into the same drawer as all my other certificates. When Olivia had a single painting chosen for a student art show at the local library that same year, our parents invited every relative we had, took roll after roll of film, and had the event program professionally framed next to a photo of her painting right in the center of the living room mantel. Even our family vacations were curated around Olivia's fleeting interests. One year, she had a brief obsession with ancient Egypt after watching a documentary, so we spent our entire spring break at a museum exhibit 2 states away. When she decided she wanted to be a marine biologist, our summer was spent at a pricey beachfront resort. My own love for hiking and national parks was always dismissed. "You're so adaptable, Amy." my mother would say, with a pat on my head. You can have fun anywhere. Whenever I tried to talk about how I felt, I was immediately shut down and labeled too sensitive or told I was making things up. The worst was when they would completely deny things that had clearly happened. That's not how I remember it at all. We have always treated you and your sister exactly the same. That constant gaslighting was enough to make me question my own sanity. My cousin Chloe was one of the only people in the family who saw it for what it was. She was a couple of years older than me and often spent parts of the summer at our house. It's insane how they fall all over Olivia. She'd whisper to me after my parents spent an entire dinner praising Olivia for getting a B on a math test, while my straight A report card went unmentioned. It's like you're invisible. I would just shrug and say, I'm used to it. To cope, I poured all my energy into my studies and becoming as independent as possible. If I couldn't earn their approval, I would at least secure my own future. By the time I was in high school, I had built a life that was almost entirely separate from my family. I was in the debate club, I volunteered at the city archives, and I had a tight-knit group of friends who valued me for me. My best friend Jess became my rock during our sophomore year. After she witnessed the over-the-top Sweet 16 they threw for Olivia, complete with a DJ and a rented hall, and then saw them give me a $20 bill for my own birthday a month later, she was horrified. This isn't normal, Amy, she told me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Parents aren't supposed to have a favorite, at least not this, obviously. Having Jess validate my feelings was like a dam breaking. For so long, I had believed their narrative that I was just being dramatic. Hearing someone else say this is not okay helped me to finally trust myself again. Just last month, I hit a huge milestone in my career. After 5 years of grinding, I was promoted to head of digital strategy at my firm. It was a big deal. When I told my family the news during our weekly Sunday dinner, my mother gave a quick nod and then immediately changed the subject to Olivia's latest relationship drama. My father mumbled a distracted "good for you" without even looking up from his phone. There was no celebratory toast, no offer to take me out for a nice dinner, nothing more than the most dismissive acknowledgement. I knew, without a doubt, that if it had been Olivia's promotion, there would have been champagne and a full-blown celebration. The childhood patterns had hardened into the unchangeable laws of our family. I was the self-sufficient one who never needed anything, and Olivia was the precious one who deserved the world. The favoritism had become our family's identity, and I felt trapped inside it. The sound of my phone buzzing with a notification had started to give me a knot in my stomach. For the past 2 weeks, every single ping was another message in the family group chat my mother had created, titled Project Olivia's Perfect Day, dedicated to planning my sister's upcoming 29th birthday. Florist needs a final decision on the centerpieces by noon tomorrow, my mother typed one night. Peonies or gardenias? Olivia adores both, but I think the peonies will catch the sunset light better on the rooftop. A flurry of responses from my Aunt Carol, my grandmother, and a few cousins followed immediately. The amount of energy and detail going into a birthday party felt more like planning a royal wedding. I just watched the messages pile up, a familiar empty feeling growing in my chest. What did you decide on for the tablecloths? My father added to the chat. I'll need to update the invoice with the rental company. Clearly, money was no object. A few days later, I overheard my dad talking to my Uncle Mark while they were on the golf course. It's a serious investment for sure, my father said, his voice full of pride. But Olivia deserves something timeless. The rose gold on the TAG Heuer will go with everything. The price he mentioned so casually would cover my rent for half a year. I had to physically turn away to hide the sharp, stabbing pain of that realization. My parents had never once considered a gift for me that cost more than a couple $100s. When I tried to gently offer a suggestion for the party, I was politely but firmly brushed aside. What about that new Italian place on Newbury Street? I typed into the chat when they were debating dinner venues. Olivia said she loved it when we went for lunch last month. Oh, sweetie, my mother replied almost instantly. We need something a bit more exclusive. I've already put a deposit down at the Celestial Lounge. The views are just breathtaking, and they're flying in a guest chef just for our event. My own birthday, the month before, had been a completely different story. There was no group chat, no weeks of planning, not even a mention of it until my father got a Facebook notification the day of. My mother called me that evening, her voice dripping with the fake apologetic tone I knew so well. "We've just been so swamped with work and planning that Arts Council benefit," she explained, conveniently forgetting the benefit was still almost a month away. "We can grab a bite tomorrow night if you're not busy. No apology for forgetting the date I've had for 32 years. Just another casual reminder that I was an afterthought." Despite the hurt, I still found myself roped into helping with Olivia's party. One Saturday, my mother asked me to go shopping with her for party favors and extra decorations. I said yes, clinging to a foolish sliver of hope that it might be a chance for us to connect. We spent 4 hours in a high-end department store while she agonized over which crystal-cut vase was more Olivia. She ended up buying both. She can just pick her favorite, she reasoned. For my last birthday, she'd given me a re-gifted candle, still in the bag from a store I'd never even been to. While my mother was smelling a dozen different scented diffusers, I slipped away to use the restroom. As I walked past the personal shopping suites, I heard my father's voice on the phone. "Yes, we've increased the budget again," he was saying. "Olivia's boyfriend is hinting he might propose soon, so we want this birthday to be extra special." The casual bombshell that they were pouring even more money into this ridiculously extravagant party, a party for the daughter whose birthday they remembered, while they had completely forgotten mine, sent a wave of sickness through me. I had to lean against the cool marble wall, fighting back hot tears. That night, I called Jess, my anchor since we were teenagers. "They've completely lost it," I told her, the words tumbling out as I described the 5-star venue, the celebrity photographer they'd hired, the ever-increasing budget. And now they're spending even more because Olivia might get engaged? It's insane. "This is way beyond favoritism, Amy," Jess said, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "Have you ever just flat out confronted them about it?" I let out a long sigh, picking at a loose thread on my sofa. Every single time I try, they either deny it completely or they turn it around on me and say I'm being too sensitive. It's like they're incapable of seeing it. "Well, maybe it's time you stop letting them get away with it," Jess suggested gently. "You've spent your entire life making yourself smaller to make them comfortable." The idea of a real confrontation made my heart pound with anxiety. My whole identity was wrapped up in being the easy, low-maintenance daughter. To make a scene went against every instinct I had. I wouldn't even know what to say, I confessed. "Start by just letting yourself be angry," Jess advised. "You have every right to be. You deserve to be celebrated too." As Olivia's birthday got closer, the resentment twisted in my gut. Every new, lavish detail I heard about, the custom ice sculpture, the string quartet, the calligraphed invitations, was another painful reminder of how little effort had been put into my own. The family dynamic was a performance, and I was tired of playing my part. The night of Olivia's party was perfect, of course. The weather was mild, the sky was clear, as if the universe itself was conspiring to give her the perfect celebration. The Celestial Lounge was on the top floor of one of Boston's tallest skyscrapers, with panoramic views of the city lights twinkling below. The entire space was decked out in thousands of tiny fairy lights, making it feel like an enchanted forest floating 40 stories above the city. I'd arrived an hour and a half early, as my mother had insisted, to help with last-minute touches. While a team of professional event planners buzzed around, my mother put me in charge of arranging the gift table and setting out the personalized place cards. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. "Make sure Olivia's gifts are front and center," my mother directed, not even looking at me as she conferred with the florist. "The smaller ones should go in front to create a nice tiered effect." I just nodded and started arranging the mountain of beautifully wrapped packages. The sheer quantity was obscene for a 29-year-old's birthday. My own birthday haul had consisted of a gift certificate to a bookstore and that re-gifted candle. The event photographer Liam arrived while I was still fussing with the gift display. He was a handsome guy with an air of professional cool, his expensive cameras slung over his shoulder. "You must be with the venue," he said, walking up to me. "Can you point me to the client? I need to go over the shot list before the guests start showing up." The assumption that I was hired help stung, but I couldn't really blame him. I was in a simple navy blue dress, having decided that trying to compete was pointless and blending in was a better strategy. "Actually, I'm the birthday girl's sister," I said, forcing a polite smile. "My mother is over there by the bar." His face flushed with embarrassment. "Oh, wow, I'm so sorry. I just assumed you were working so hard on the setup." "No worries," I said, even though the exchange just cemented my status as a background character in my own family's story. By 7:30, the lounge was filled with guests, extended family, Olivia's army of friends, her colleagues, even some of my parents' business partners, all arriving with more gifts and gushing compliments. I found myself instinctively falling into my usual role, taking coats and pointing people towards the open bar. At 8 o'clock sharp, my father sent a text, bringing her up now. The guests all gathered by the elevators, champagne flutes at the ready. When the doors opened to reveal Olivia, the room erupted in a chorus of surprise. Her reaction was an Oscar-worthy performance. Her perfectly manicured hands flew to her mouth, her eyes went wide, and she let out a shriek of pure theatrical delight. She looked like a movie star in a shimmering designer dress, her hair and makeup professionally done. "Oh my God," she gasped, tears already welling in her eyes. "I can't believe you all did this for me." My father was beaming, his chest puffed out with pride. "Only the best for our girl," he said, kissing her forehead. My mother then paraded Olivia through the crowd, both of them soaking in the praise like royalty. I just hung back, sipping my champagne and watching the whole thing unfold with a weird sense of detachment. Dinner was a 7-course tasting menu, each dish more intricate than the last. The chef came out to explain each course, and a sommelier presented each wine pairing with a long-winded speech. Throughout the meal, one person after another stood up to give a toast to Olivia. My father's was especially gushing, calling her the light of our lives. My mother recited a list of Olivia's accomplishments, from winning a kindergarten art contest to her recent promotion at the small design firm where she'd worked for less than 2 years. The bitter taste in my mouth wasn't from the wine, it was from the memory of my own, more significant promotion being met with a shrug just weeks before. After dessert, it was time for gifts. Olivia was seated in a plush armchair, like a queen on her throne, surrounded by the mountain of presents I had so dutifully arranged. She opened each one with dramatic flair, holding up designer handbags, luxury skincare, and expensive home decor for everyone to admire. The grand finale came when my father presented a small, heavy box. "This one's from your mother and me, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Olivia unwrapped it slowly, letting out the expected gasp when she saw the rose gold TAG Heuer nestled in its velvet box. She slipped it on her wrist and flew into our parents' arms for a tearful 3-way hug. "It's perfect," she whispered into a nearby microphone that broadcast her words throughout the room. "I love you both so much." Liam, the photographer, captured the moment from every conceivable angle. My own gift to her, a rare first edition of her favorite childhood novel that I had spent months searching for, was opened in a flash and set aside with a quick, "Oh, thanks, Amy," before she moved on to the next box. Later, as the party transitioned into dancing, my Aunt Carol cornered me. "You look a bit washed out, Amelia," she commented, her eyes scanning my simple dress with disapproval. "Your sister is just glowing, isn't she? Always the life of the party. You could really learn a thing or two from her about making an effort." I just forced a smile. "Olivia's always been the star." "It's a shame you didn't inherit any of that sparkle," she said, patting my arm in a way that felt more like a judgment than a comfort. As she walked away, I felt a hand on my elbow. It was my cousin, Chloe, holding out a fresh glass of champagne. "Aunt Carol is in rare form tonight," she said with a sympathetic eye roll. "How are you holding up through all this?" I just shrugged, taking the glass. "You know? The usual." "No, this is not usual," Chloe insisted, her gaze sweeping over the opulent party. "This is completely over the top, even for them. The difference in how they treat you two is getting out of control." "I'm used to it," I mumbled, the words a reflex. "Well, you shouldn't be," she said firmly. "No one should have to get used to being treated like a second-class citizen by their own parents." By the time midnight rolled around, I was emotionally exhausted. I watched Olivia dancing in the center of the room, my parents hovering nearby like doting courtiers, the photographer's flash popping endlessly. The weight of being invisible was crushing me. I slipped out onto the terrace, the cool night air a welcome relief. The Boston skyline glittered around me, a beautiful and indifferent witness to the storm inside my chest. For 32 years, I had quietly accepted my role. I was the responsible one, the forgotten one, the one who didn't need anything. But standing there, the stark contrast between Olivia's fairy tale party and my own non-existent celebration had finally broken something inside me. I made a decision. I would no longer smile and pretend it didn't hurt. I would no longer play along with the family fiction that everything was equal. Something had to give. A week after Olivia's party, my mother called, her voice bright with what she clearly thought was a brilliant idea. "We were thinking, we really should celebrate your birthday properly since we were so busy last month," she said, as if I should be grateful for the afterthought. "How about dinner tomorrow night? Just the family?" Despite the resolution I'd made on that terrace, a stupid little flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe seeing the sheer scale of Olivia's party had made them realize the imbalance. Maybe this was a real apology. "That sounds nice," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Where were you thinking?" "Oh, nothing too crazy. That American Grill you mentioned a while back should be fine." The place she was referring to wasn't the chic spot on Newbury Street I'd suggested for Olivia, but a generic chain restaurant out in the suburbs near their house. Still, it was something. "I'll make a reservation," I offered, knowing that if I didn't, it probably wouldn't happen. "Great. 7:30 works for us." The next night, I got to the restaurant early. The hostess led me to a cramped booth in a dark corner next to the kitchen doors. I asked for a different table, but most of the restaurant was reserved for a corporate mixer. By 7:45, my parents finally showed up, with Olivia trailing behind them. My dad immediately started complaining about the table while checking his work emails. Olivia looked utterly bored, already scrolling through her phone, where she was still reposting photos from her party. "Your Uncle Mark might swing by later," my mother announced. "He has another commitment, but said he'd try to make it for dessert." The chaotic, last-minute nature of this celebration was a universe away from the military precision of Project Olivia's perfect day. We ordered, and Olivia held court, showing my parents the endless stream of comments on her party photos. Everyone said it was the best party they've ever been to, she bragged. My mother beamed. Well, Liam the photographer really captured the magic. We've already ordered a custom leather-bound album. I just sipped my water, feeling more and more like an idiot for even coming. This wasn't a celebration for me. It was just another encore performance of Olivia's. When our food came, I made an attempt to talk about my work. We just landed the big Henderson account. It's the largest client my firm has ever signed. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, her eyes already drifting back to Olivia's phone. My dad took a call in the middle of his steak, disappearing from the table for 10 minutes. By the time dessert came, Uncle Mark had texted to say he wasn't going to make it. My mother flagged down a waiter. "Could you bring something for a birthday?" "Just something small," she added. The waiter returned with a single, sad-looking cupcake. The frosting was cracked, and the lone candle was tilted at a precarious angle. He set it in front of me with a mumbled happy birthday before rushing away. Make a wish, Olivia said, not even looking up. I blew out the pathetic little flame, wishing I was anywhere else. Then my mother pulled a crumpled envelope from her purse. This is from all of us, she said, sliding it across the sticky table. Inside, on a cheap card with a cartoon bulldog on the front, were the words, "Hooray for another year down the drain." Below the printed joke was just my mother's signature. No personal note, no gift card, just that. I stared at the card, the weight of 3 decades of being an afterthought crashing down on me. When I didn't laugh, my mother's face hardened. "Oh, lighten up, Amelia. It's just a joke, unless you're getting overly sensitive in your old age." And that was it. That was the moment the dam finally broke. Years of suppressed hurt and quiet anger crystallized into a single blinding flash of clarity. Without saying a word, I took out my phone. I snapped a photo. The sad cupcake, the insulting card, my family's bored faces. "What are you doing?" my mother demanded. I stood up and grabbed my purse. "I have to go." "But you haven't even touched your cupcake," she protested, as if that sad little pastry was a genuine offering of love. "Olivia can have it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You all seem like you'd rather be celebrating her anyway." My father returned from his call just as I was walking away. "What's wrong with her now?" I heard him ask as the door swung shut behind me. In the parking lot, I fumbled for my keys, tears finally blurring my vision. I got in my car and immediately called Jess. "Can I come over?" I choked out. "Of course," she said instantly. "What happened?" "Everything. Nothing." "The same thing that always happens," I sobbed, starting the engine. "I'll explain when I get there." 20 minutes later, I was on her couch, showing her the picture on my phone. "This is beyond neglect, Amy," Jess said, her face a mask of fury. "This is cruel. They spend thousands on a party for Olivia, and they can't even get you a real birthday cake or a decent card. I've spent my whole life making excuses for them," I whispered. The admission both painful and freeing, telling myself I was the one being too sensitive. "No," Jess said, putting her hand on mine. "You are not. What they do is wrong, and you deserve so much better." Looking at the photo again, the evidence was just so undeniable. It was impossible to explain away. For the first time, I let myself feel the full force of my anger. "I'm so tired of pretending it doesn't hurt," I said. "Then stop pretending," Jess replied. "You've spent your life bending over backwards to accommodate their narrative. Maybe it's time they had to face the reality of it." I stared at the picture, a perfect distillation of 32 years of being second best. What would that even look like? "That's up to you," Jess said. "But whatever you do, I've got your back." As we talked late into the night, an idea began to form. That photo was a truth my family had spent my entire life denying. Maybe it was time to make that truth impossible to ignore any longer. Sitting on Jess's couch, a mug of tea warming my hands, I opened my social media app. My thumb hovered over the photo I'd taken at the restaurant. The pathetic cupcake, the joke card, the empty space where my father should have been. "Are you really sure about this?" Jess asked, watching me with a worried expression. I took a deep, shaky breath and nodded. For 32 years, I've protected them. I've been the good daughter, the one who never makes a fuss. And what has it gotten me? "A lifetime of being made to feel invisible," she answered softly. I started to type. I didn't write with anger, but with facts. I laid out the stark contrast. I described Olivia's rooftop party, the professional photographer, and the TAG Heuer watch. Then I described my chain restaurant dinner, the sad little cupcake, and the insulting card. To make the point impossible to miss, I created a side-by-side image. On one side, a photo from Olivia's party that she had tagged me in, showing my beaming parents presenting her with the watch against the glittering Boston skyline. On the other, the photo I had just taken. I wrote about the pattern, how it wasn't just about birthdays, but about a lifetime of achievements celebrated versus achievements ignored. "This is terrifying," I told Jess as my finger hovered over the post button. Sometimes the truth has to be, she said, especially when it's been silenced for so long. I hit post, and then I turned my phone face down on the coffee table. A wave of pure panic washed over me, but it was followed by something else, a profound sense of relief. We tried to distract ourselves with a mindless reality show, but a couple of hours later, I couldn't resist. I picked up my phone. The screen was flooded with notifications. The post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments. Old friends from college, co-workers, even distant acquaintances were all expressing shock and support. Then my phone rang. It was Chloe. "What on earth did you do?" she asked, her voice a mix of panic and awe. "I told the truth," I said simply. "Well, your mother is having a full-blown meltdown," Chloe reported. "She called my mom sobbing, saying you're trying to publicly humiliate the family. I just posted 2 photographs," I said. "If the truth is humiliating, that's on them, not on me. Your dad is threatening to call the restaurant to complain about the cupcake, as if that's the point," she said, and I actually laughed at the absurdity of it. "And Olivia is hysterical. She keeps wailing that you're trying to ruin her life and make everyone hate her." A familiar pang of guilt tried to surface, but I shoved it down. "I didn't say a single bad thing about Olivia," I clarified. "This isn't about her. It's about how our parents have treated us." "I know," Chloe said. "And for what it's worth, you're 100% right. Everyone has seen this for years, and they just gaslit you every time you tried to talk about it." Her validation was like a balm on a raw wound. Soon, the texts from my immediate family started pouring in. My mother, "How could you do this to us? We raised you better than to air our private matters in public." My father, "Take that post down immediately. This is immature and completely out of line." Olivia sent a barrage of tearful emojis and accusations. "Now everyone is going to think I'm a spoiled brat because of you. Is this what you wanted?" I silenced my phone and handed it to Jess. "I can't," I said. "You don't have to," she replied. "You said your piece. Let them sit in their discomfort for a change." The next morning, I woke up to hundreds more notifications. The post had been shared, and my story was resonating with so many people. Tucked among the messages of support was one from my Uncle Mark. "I've seen this your whole life, Amy. Your parents have always played favorites. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. If they're angry, it's because you're showing them a truth they've never wanted to see." His message brought fresh tears to my eyes, but this time, they were tears of validation. "What now?" Jess asked as she put a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me. "I have no idea," I admitted. "I never thought past hitting post. They're probably expecting you to delete it and apologize," she noted. "I'm not doing either of those things," I said, a new resolve hardening inside me. That afternoon, Chloe called again. My parents were organizing a family meeting for the next evening. "They're calling it an intervention," she said, unable to hide her disbelief, "as if you're the one with the problem." "An intervention for me?" I asked, a dark humor bubbling up. "Apparently. Your mother told my mom, and I quote, 'Amelia needs to understand the damage she has caused with her public tantrum.'" I closed my eyes. "Will you be there?" I asked her. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," Chloe said. "Someone has to be in your corner." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The thought of walking into that room, of facing their collective anger, was nauseating. But for the first time in my life, I felt grounded in my own truth. The post had cracked open a lifetime of lies. There was no going back to pretending. Whatever came next, I would face it. The next evening, I drove to my parents' house feeling surprisingly calm. The anxiety had been replaced by a quiet, steady determination. I parked behind Chloe's car and took a deep breath before walking up to the door I'd known my whole life. I could hear their voices inside, already agitated. I let myself in with my key. The living room was set up like a courtroom. My parents were on the love seat, with Olivia huddled next to them in an armchair. Aunt Carol sat stiffly on a side chair while Uncle Mark stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. Chloe had deliberately chosen a seat slightly apart from the main group. The moment I walked in, all conversation stopped. My mother's face was puffy, my father's was set in a grim line, and Olivia wouldn't look at me. "Amelia," my father began, his voice tight. "Thank you for coming." I sat in the one empty chair they had left for me, directly opposite them. "The accused in the dock. We need to talk about your behavior," my mother started, her voice trembling with self-righteous anger. That post was vindictive and deeply hurtful. I just sat there, my hands folded in my lap, and let her talk. "The things you implied about this family. How could you embarrass us like that?" When I didn't respond, my father took over. "We have always provided for you. We supported you through college, helped you with your condo. We celebrated your successes." "Did you, though?" I finally asked, my voice even. "Can you tell me the last time you truly celebrated one of my successes?" The question hung in the room. My father scowled, unable to produce an answer. "That's not the point," my mother cut in. "The point is you threw a tantrum online over a birthday party. It was never about one party," I said. "The party was just the latest chapter in a story that's been writing itself for 32 years. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Aunt Carol scoffed. "All children feel a little slighted by their siblings sometimes. It's no reason to cause a public spectacle." "With all due respect, Aunt Carol, you have no idea what it was like," I said, my directness surprising even myself. I turned back to my parents. "When I was in 4th grade, I won the regional spelling bee. You both missed it because Olivia had a cold. When she won a most improved ribbon at her swim meet that same year, you took the entire family out for a steak dinner." I saw my mother open her mouth to argue, but I kept going, my voice gaining strength. "When I graduated with honors from Boston University, you left the ceremony early to help Olivia move into her new off-campus apartment. When she graduated 3 years later with a general studies degree, you threw her a party for 100 people. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a list I had made. Last month, I was promoted to head of digital strategy. Your response was a distracted good for you before you changed the subject. 2 weeks later, Olivia gets a minor promotion at her tiny firm, and you send a massive bouquet of flowers to her office and take her to one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. With every example, the self-righteous anger on my parents' faces began to deflate. Olivia was staring at her lap. Uncle Mark gave a slow, deliberate nod. "We love both of our daughters equally," my mother insisted, but her voice was weak. "You might love us equally in your hearts," I said, "but your actions have never shown that. You can't possibly keep a scorecard of every little thing for 30 years, my father boomed. "I didn't have to," I replied calmly. "The pattern was so blatant, anyone who was paying attention could see it." That's when Chloe spoke up. "She's right, Aunt Helen. It's been obvious to everyone for years." My mother looked at her, stunned. "That is not true." "It is," Uncle Mark confirmed from the fireplace, his voice quiet but firm. "We've all watched you shower Olivia with attention and take Amelia for granted since they were girls. I kept hoping you'd grow out of it, but you never did. So now you're all ganging up on us?" my father demanded, his face turning red. "No one is ganging up on you," I said, "but I am done pretending this is okay." Olivia finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "So this is all my fault? You hate me because Mom and Dad are nice to me?" "This was never about you, Olivia," I said gently. "I don't hate you. I resent them for making their love and approval feel like a scarce resource that you always got, and I never did." "We never wanted you to feel that way," my mother whispered, her defiance finally crumbling into what looked like genuine pain. "Your intentions don't matter when the impact is the same," I said. "For my entire life, you have consistently put Olivia's wants, needs, and feelings ahead of mine. And whenever I tried to talk about it, you told me I was crazy. You made me feel like the problem." The room was silent. "What do you want from us, Amelia?" my father finally asked, his voice defeated. "I want you to acknowledge it," I said. "I want you to stop denying my reality. I want you to try to actually make an effort to see me and value me in the same way you do Olivia." Another long silence. I had no idea, Olivia said, her voice barely a whisper. I mean, I knew they made a bigger deal about my stuff, but I never realized how much it was hurting you. That small admission, that tiny crack in the facade felt monumental. Maybe. We have been a bit over the top with Olivia, my mother admitted, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. She just always seemed to need more encouragement. And I didn't? I asked. Just because I learned how to manage on my own doesn't mean I didn't want or need your support. My father cleared his throat. I suppose, when I really think about it, we may have fallen into some habits. That hesitant acknowledgement after a lifetime of denial was a breath of fresh air. I think you should all consider family counseling, Uncle Mark suggested into the quiet. This didn't happen overnight, and it won't be fixed in one night either. To my shock, my father slowly nodded. That might not be a bad idea. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. I need you to try, I said, and you need to understand that our relationship from this point on depends on your willingness to do that. My mother looked horrified. Are you threatening to cut us off? No, I clarified. I'm setting a boundary. I will no longer participate in a dynamic where I am the afterthought. The choice of whether or not to change that dynamic is up to you. The conversation went on for hours, a painful cycle of denial, anger, and tiny glimmers of understanding. By the time I left, emotionally drained but feeling lighter than I had in years, we had agreed to find a family therapist. It was a start. As Chloe walked me to my car, she squeezed my arm. I'm so proud of you, she said. Thanks for being here, I replied, my voice thick. I couldn't have done it without you. Driving home through the dark, quiet streets, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time, I had refused to play the part they wrote for me. Whatever came next, I would never let myself be invisible again. 6 months after that explosive confrontation, I was sitting in the waiting room of our therapist's office. Family counseling had become a regular, bi-monthly part of our lives. It was often grueling and painful, but it was necessary. The door opened and my mother came out looking tired but resolute. We had started doing individual sessions in addition to the group ones. Ready for coffee? She asked, her voice softer than I was used to. Sure, I said, and we walked in a comfortable silence to the cafe around the corner that had become our post-therapy ritual. My mother ordered for us both, remembering I liked oat milk and an extra shot in my latte. It was a small thing, but it was huge. Dr. Evans suggested I bring in some of the old photo albums next time, she said as we sat down. She wants to talk about the different ways we documented your childhoods. I nodded. The first few sessions had been brutal. My father had stormed out of one, and my mother had cried through another. Olivia had struggled the most, grappling with the guilt of being the favorite, a role she never asked for. You didn't create the dynamic, I had to tell her more than once. We were kids. It was their job to fix it, not yours. Slowly, we were all learning a new way to be a family. My parents were making a conscious effort. They called me just to chat, not because they needed something. My father actually came to a presentation I gave at a marketing conference and took me to lunch to celebrate afterward. We're starting to plan your birthday, my mother said now, pulling me from my thoughts. I know it's a few weeks away, but we want to make sure it's special. The irony was not lost on me. Nothing big, I said quickly. It's not about competing with Olivia's party. It's just about being thoughtful. My mother's eyes filled with a new kind of understanding. It was never about the money, was it? She asked quietly. No, I said. It was about feeling seen. It was about feeling like I mattered just as much. Those moments of clarity were happening more and more. We were peeling back the layers of our dysfunction, one painful conversation at a time. In other parts of my life, things were blooming. That newfound confidence had seeped into my work, my friendships, even my love life. I had reconnected with Liam, the photographer from Olivia's party. He'd apologized profusely for mistaking me for staff, and we'd ended up going for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a real, healthy relationship. With him, I didn't accept the scraps of attention I used to think I deserved. I expected a partner, and he was happy to be one. My relationship with Olivia was also changing. We started having sister lunches, and for the first time, we were talking honestly. "I always thought you were mad at me for being more outgoing," she admitted one day. "I never realized it was because of how differently Mom and Dad treated us." "I was never mad at you," I told her. "I was mad that they made it seem like your qualities were the only ones worth valuing." The online post that started it all had another unforeseen effect. It connected me with a whole community of people who had lived through the same thing. We had formed a private online group for adult children of parental favoritism. Sharing our stories and validating each other's experiences had become a vital part of my healing. As I finished my coffee with my mother, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I am so sorry, Amelia," she said, looking me straight in the eye. "I'm sorry it took you doing something so public for us to finally hear you. I wish you had listened sooner, too," I admitted. "But I'm glad we're listening now. We weren't fixed, but we were a family in repair, committed to building something new." As my 33rd birthday approached, there was no dread. I knew, whatever my family planned, it would come from a place of new awareness. The healing wasn't in the size of the celebration, but in the simple act of being seen. Speaking my truth had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it had given me back my family, not the one we pretended to be, but a real, flawed, and trying one. If my story resonates with you, please share it. Have you ever had to stand up to a painful family dynamic? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you found value in my journey from being invisible to being seen. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the bravest and most loving thing you can do is speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. End of story.